5 years ago, Mia Turner was a poor college student, working 2 jobs just to pay her tuition. Back then, she loved a man named Brandon Cole, a wealthy young man who promised her the world, but abandoned her the moment her family lost their business and their money disappeared completely. "I can't be with someone who has nothing to offer me," Brandon had said coldly, walking away without looking back, leaving Mia heartbroken and humiliated in front of their entire friend group. That day changed Mia forever. She promised herself she would never again let anyone make her feel small, worthless, or forgotten. She left the city shortly after, determined to rebuild her life somewhere far away from painful memories. 5 years later, Mia walked through the grand entrance of the city's most luxurious shopping mall. Dressed elegantly in designer clothes, her confidence radiating with every step. Nobody who saw her now would ever guess she was once a struggling student counting coins for bus fare. 2 bodyguards walked quietly behind her, keeping a respectful distance, always watching, always alert. Mia was no longer just Mia Turner. She was Mia Cross, wife of Damien Cross, the most powerful and feared mafia boss in the entire city. Her life had transformed completely since that heartbreaking day years ago, though very few people from her old life knew the truth about her new identity. As she browsed quietly through an upscale jewelry store, admiring a beautiful diamond bracelet, a familiar voice suddenly interrupted her peaceful afternoon. "Mia, is that really you?" Mia turned slowly, her heart skipping momentarily as she recognized the voice immediately. Brandon Cole stood a few steps away, older now, though his arrogant smile remained exactly the same as she remembered. "Brandon," she said calmly, her voice steady despite the surprise of seeing him again after all these years. Brandon's eyes moved over her expensive clothing, her elegant jewelry, clearly confused by the drastic change in her appearance. "Wow, look at you," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "Did you finally find a rich boyfriend to take care of you? Because, last I remember, you couldn't even afford your own textbooks." Mia's bodyguards shifted slightly behind her, sensing the tension immediately, though they remained silent, waiting for her signal. "Excuse me?" Mia asked calmly, though her eyes narrowed slightly at his rude comment. Brandon laughed dismissively, clearly enjoying the moment. "Come on, Mia. We both know poor girls like you don't suddenly become rich unless they find someone else to pay their bills." He glanced around at the surrounding luxury store, smirking confidently. "Whoever he is, I hope he knows exactly what he's gotten himself into." Several nearby shoppers turned their heads, drawn by Brandon's loud, mocking voice. Mia felt embarrassment rising briefly, memories of their painful breakup flooding back uncomfortably. But unlike 5 years ago, this time, she refused to let humiliation control her. "You haven't changed at all, Brandon," Mia said calmly, her voice carrying quiet confidence. "Still judging people's worth by the size of their bank account." Brandon chuckled arrogantly, completely unaware of the danger surrounding him. "That's just reality, Mia. Money matters. It always has, and it always will." Before Mia could respond, one of her bodyguards stepped forward slightly, his expression serious. "Mrs. Cross," he said quietly, "would you like us to handle this situation?" Brandon's smug smile faltered instantly at the sound of her new last name. "Mrs. Cross?" he repeated, confusion clear on his face. As in Damien Cross," Mia confirmed calmly, watching Brandon's confident expression crumble completely. The color drained from Brandon's face almost immediately. Everyone in the city knew exactly who Damien Cross was, the most feared, dangerous, and powerful man controlling half the businesses and territories in the entire region. You're married to Damien Cross?" Brandon stammered, his earlier arrogance replaced instantly by visible fear. 5 years ago, you humiliated me because I had nothing," Mia said quietly, stepping closer, her voice steady and controlled. "You made sure everyone around us knew exactly how worthless you thought I was." Brandon's hands trembled slightly, his earlier confidence completely gone. "Mia, you didn't know I would rebuild my entire life." Mia interrupted calmly. "That I would find happiness and success without needing your approval or your money." Brandon glanced nervously at the two bodyguards standing silently behind Mia, clearly terrified of what consequences his careless words might bring. "Please, Mia, I was young and stupid back then. I didn't mean the things I said." Mia studied him carefully, a calm, unreadable expression settling over her face. Unlike the heartbroken girl he once humiliated, she now held complete power over this moment, and Brandon knew it. "Relax, Brandon," Mia finally said, her voice softer, though still firm. "I'm not interested in revenge over something so small." Brandon visibly relaxed, relief flooding his pale face. "Thank you, Mia. I appreciate your understanding." Mia's expression shifted slightly, a small, knowing smile forming on her lips. "But my husband, on the other hand, might have very different feelings about someone publicly humiliating his wife." Brandon's relief vanished instantly, replaced by fresh terror as he glanced nervously toward the mall entrance, half expecting Damien Cross himself to appear at any moment. "Does he know I'm here?" Brandon asked, his voice trembling slightly. Brandon stood frozen in the middle of the jewelry store, watching Mia walk away calmly with her bodyguards close behind her. Her final words echoed in his mind, sending cold waves of fear through his entire body. He will, very soon. He knew exactly what that meant. Everyone in the city understood the reputation of Damien Cross, a man who ruled his territory with absolute control. Someone who did not tolerate disrespect toward his family, especially not toward his wife. Brandon spent the rest of the day in a state of complete panic, jumping at every unfamiliar sound, glancing nervously over his shoulder wherever he went. By evening, exhausted from anxiety, he finally returned to his apartment, hoping desperately that Mia had simply been trying to scare him. He was wrong. As Brandon unlocked his apartment door, two men in dark suits stepped out from the shadows of the hallway, their expressions calm but clearly serious. "Brandon Cole?" one of them asked, his voice steady and controlled. Brandon's heart pounded violently. "Yes, that's me," he stammered, his hands trembling as he gripped his keys tightly. "Mr. Cross would like to speak with you," the second man said simply. "Now!" Brandon wanted to refuse, to run, to disappear completely. But he knew instantly there was no realistic escape from men connected to someone as powerful as Damien Cross. Reluctantly, he followed them down to a black car waiting outside his building. The drive was completely silent, every passing minute increasing Brandon's anxiety. Finally, the car arrived at a tall, imposing building in the heart of the city, the well-known headquarters of Damien Cross's business empire. Brandon was led through polished hallways, past serious-looking guards, until he finally reached a large private office on the top floor. Sitting behind an enormous desk, Damien Cross studied him carefully, his sharp, intense eyes immediately making Brandon feel smaller than he ever had in his entire life. "Sit down," Damien said calmly, gesturing toward the chair across from his desk. Brandon obeyed instantly, sitting nervously, his hands trembling in his lap. "Mr. Cross, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "Is that so?" Damien asked, his voice deceptively calm, though his sharp eyes remained fixed intensely on Brandon's nervous face. "Because my wife came home today visibly upset after running into an old acquaintance at the mall." Brandon swallowed hard, choosing his next words extremely carefully. "Mr. Cross, I didn't know Mia was your wife. If I had known, I promise you, I never would have said those things." Damien leaned forward slightly, his expression darkening. "So if she had still been poor, still struggling like she was 5 years ago, you believe your cruelty would have been acceptable?" Brandon's face paled instantly, realizing his mistake too late. "That's not what I meant, sir." I know exactly what you meant," Damien interrupted sharply, his voice carrying quiet, controlled anger. "You believe my wife's worth depended entirely on her financial situation, that without money she deserved humiliation and disrespect." Brandon remained silent, understanding clearly that any further attempt at explanation would only worsen his already dangerous situation. Damien studied him silently for a long, tense moment, allowing the weight of the silence to increase Brandon's anxiety even further. Finally, he spoke again, his voice calm but deadly serious. "Let me explain something clearly, Brandon," Damien said. "5 years ago, you abandoned Mia when she had nothing, believing she was worthless without wealth or status. But what you failed to understand is that her true value was never about money. It was about her strength, resilience, and character, qualities she demonstrated clearly by rebuilding her entire life after your cruelty." Brandon nodded quickly, fear preventing him from speaking. "You humiliated the woman I loved," Damien continued, his voice growing sharper. "Publicly, cruelly, without a single thought for her feelings. That is not something I take lightly. Please, Mr. Cross," Brandon finally managed to say, his voice shaking uncontrollably. "I'm sorry, truly sorry. I'll do anything to fix this mistake." Damien remained silent momentarily, his sharp mind clearly considering multiple possibilities. Then unexpectedly the office door opened quietly, and Mia walked in, her expression calm and composed. "Damien," she said softly, "may I speak with him alone for a moment?" Damien glanced at his wife carefully, then nodded slowly, standing up and walking toward the door. "I'll be right outside," he said, his tone still serious, though noticeably softer when speaking to her. Once Damien left the room, Mia turned her full attention toward Brandon, who sat visibly shaking in his chair. "You look terrified," she observed calmly. "I am," Brandon admitted honestly, his usual arrogance completely gone. Mia studied him quietly for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "5 years ago, you taught me an important lesson, Brandon. You taught me that people who value money more than character will always disappoint you eventually." Brandon lowered his gaze, shame clearly visible on his face. "You're right. I was wrong back then, and I was wrong again today." Mia nodded slowly, considering his words carefully. "I'm not interested in revenge, Brandon. I've built a good life, a happy life, far beyond anything our past relationship could have given me. But my husband, understandably, feels very differently about people who hurt me." Brandon's fear returned instantly. What is he going to do?" Mia's expression remained calm, though something unreadable flickered behind her eyes. "That," she said quietly, "depends entirely on what happens in the next few minutes." Brandon sat frozen in his chair, waiting anxiously for Mia to continue. Her calm, unreadable expression made the tension in the room almost unbearable. "What happens next?" he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Mia studied him carefully before answering. "That depends on you, Brandon. Specifically, on whether you're capable of real honesty, or if you'll continue hiding behind arrogance and excuses." Brandon nodded quickly, desperate to prove himself trustworthy. "I'll tell you the truth, whatever you want to know. Why did you really leave me 5 years ago?" Mia asked directly, her voice steady despite the painful memory. "Was it truly just about money, or was there something else?" Brandon hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the question. "It wasn't just about money," he admitted slowly. "My parents threatened to cut me off completely if I stayed with someone who couldn't help advance our family's social status. I was weak. I chose reputation and money over someone who actually cared about me." Mia listened carefully, her expression softening slightly, though her guard remained firmly in place. "And today at the mall? Why humiliate me publicly, especially after all these years?" Brandon lowered his gaze, ashamed. "Seeing you looking successful, confident, happy without me, it hurt my pride. I wanted to feel superior again, the way I always did when we were together." Mia nodded slowly, absorbing his honest confession. "Insecurity disguised as arrogance," she said quietly. "That's exactly what I remember about you, Brandon." Brandon remained silent, understanding clearly that any further excuses would only worsen the situation. The office door opened again, and Damien walked back inside, his sharp eyes immediately studying both Mia and Brandon carefully. "Have you learned what you needed to know?" he asked his wife directly. Mia nodded calmly. "Yes, I have." Damien turned his attention toward Brandon, his expression unreadable, though clearly still serious. "And what do you believe should happen now, Mia?" Mia considered the question carefully before answering. I think Brandon has already punished himself enough through years of insecurity and unhappiness. Real revenge isn't necessary here, Damien. What matters most is that he understands clearly, moving forward, the consequences of cruelty toward others. Damien studied his wife thoughtfully, clearly respecting her judgment, though his own protective instincts remained evident in his sharp, watchful eyes. "If that's your decision, I'll respect it completely," he said finally. "But Brandon needs to understand something clearly before he leaves this room." Brandon straightened nervously in his chair. "Yes, sir?" Damien's voice grew serious, deliberate, each word carrying quiet, controlled authority. "If you ever disrespect my wife again, publicly or privately, in any way whatsoever, there will be no second warning. Do you understand?" Brandon nodded quickly, fear evident in his trembling voice. "Yes, sir. Completely understood." "Good," Damien said, gesturing toward the door. "Then this conversation is finished." Relief flooded through Brandon as he stood quickly, eager to leave the tense atmosphere of the office. Before he reached the door, however, Mia spoke once more, stopping him momentarily. "Brandon," she said calmly. He turned back, cautious. "Yes? I hope you find genuine happiness someday," Mia said sincerely, "built on real values, rather than money or status." Brandon nodded slowly, surprised by the unexpected kindness in her words after everything that had happened. "Thank you, Mia. I truly hope the same for you." With that, Brandon left quickly, escorted quietly out of the building by the same guards who had brought him there earlier. Once he was gone, Damien turned toward his wife, studying her carefully. "You handled that better than most people would have," he said, admiration clear in his voice. Mia smiled softly, moving closer to him. "Revenge never truly satisfies anyone, Damien. I learned that a long time ago. What matters most is the life we've built together since then." Damien wrapped his arms gently around her, pulling her into a warm, comforting embrace. "I still don't like how he treated you," he admitted quietly. "I know," Mia said, smiling against his chest. "But that's exactly why I love you, because you always protect the people you care about." Later that evening, as Mia and Damien sat together on their private balcony overlooking the city, Mia found herself reflecting deeply on how far she had come since those painful, difficult years struggling alone. "Do you ever think about how different your life would be if we had never met?" she asked quietly. Damien considered the question seriously, his expression thoughtful. "I think about it sometimes," he admitted. "But honestly, Mia, I can't imagine my life without you anymore. You've become the most important part of everything I've built." Unknown to Mia and Damien, their private moment at the mall had not gone completely unnoticed. Standing quietly near the jewelry store that afternoon, a woman named Vanessa Reyes had watched the entire confrontation between Mia and Brandon with sharp, calculating interest. Vanessa was not an ordinary shopper. She worked closely with the Moreno family, longtime rivals of Damien Cross, always searching carefully for any weakness they could exploit. Witnessing Mia's public confrontation, followed immediately by protective bodyguards rushing to her side, had immediately caught Vanessa's attention. That evening, Vanessa reported everything she witnessed directly to her employer, Salvador Moreno, the ambitious and ruthless head of the Moreno family. "Damien Cross's wife has a public history," Vanessa explained carefully. "An ex-boyfriend who clearly still holds influence over her emotions. This could be useful." Salvador listened carefully, his sharp mind already considering multiple possibilities. "Useful how exactly?" "If we can find a way to use this ex-boyfriend against them," Vanessa suggested, "create tension, exploit old wounds. We might finally find the opening we need to weaken Damien Cross's careful control over the city." Salvador smiled slowly, clearly intrigued by the idea. "Find this man," he ordered. "Brandon Cole. I want to know everything about him, his weaknesses, his debts, anything we can use to convince him to cooperate with us." Meanwhile, unaware of the danger quietly forming around them, Mia and Damien continued settling comfortably back into their normal routine over the following days. However, 3 days after the tense confrontation at Cross Tower, Brandon received an unexpected visit at his apartment. Mia smiled warmly, leaning comfortably against him, grateful for the incredible journey that had led her from heartbreak and poverty to genuine happiness and unexpected love. But even as peace settled comfortably over their evening, neither Mia nor Damien realized that Brandon's humiliation at the mall had already caught unwanted attention elsewhere. Attention that would soon threaten the very happiness they had worked so hard to build together. Two unfamiliar men knocked on his door, calm and professional in appearance, though something about their presence immediately made Brandon nervous. "Brandon Cole," one of them asked politely. "Yes," Brandon answered cautiously, his mind still haunted by memories of Damien's serious warning. "Can I help you?" "Our employer would like to speak with you," the man explained smoothly, "regarding a business opportunity that could benefit you significantly." Brandon hesitated, his instincts immediately warning him against involvement with unfamiliar, mysterious men. "I'm not interested in any business opportunities right now," he said carefully, attempting to close the door. The second man stepped forward slightly, his tone growing firmer. "I don't think you understand, Mr. Cole. This isn't exactly optional." Brandon's heart pounded nervously, realizing quickly that these men were not simply offering a friendly business proposal. Reluctantly, he agreed to accompany them, hoping desperately this meeting had nothing to do with Damien Cross or the recent tension surrounding Mia. He was wrong again. Brandon was taken to a quiet, private restaurant where Salvador Moreno waited calmly, sipping wine with practiced patience. "Please sit," Salvador said smoothly, gesturing toward the empty chair across from him. Brandon obeyed nervously, his instincts screaming danger. "Who are you?" he asked cautiously. "My name is Salvador Moreno," he introduced himself calmly. "I understand you recently had quite an interesting encounter with Damien Cross's wife." Brandon's face paled instantly. "How do you know about that?" Salvador smiled coolly. "I make it my business to know important details, Brandon, especially details involving my rivals." Brandon swallowed nervously, understanding immediately the dangerous position he now found himself trapped within. "I don't want any trouble," he said quickly. "I already apologized to Mia and her husband. This situation is finished." "Not quite," Salvador said calmly, leaning forward slightly. "You see, Brandon, I have a proposal for you, one that could clear away any lingering debts or financial troubles you're currently facing." Brandon hesitated, curiosity mixing dangerously with fear. "What kind of proposal?" Salvador's smile widened slightly, calculating and confident. "All I need from you, Brandon, is information. Small, harmless details about Damien Cross's routines, his schedule, anything Mia might have mentioned casually during your encounter or afterward." Brandon shook his head quickly, realizing the serious danger of what Salvador was suggesting. "I can't do that. If Damien ever discovered I was helping his enemies, he would kill me. And if you refuse me," Salvador said calmly, his tone suddenly sharper, more threatening, "you might not survive long enough to worry about Damien Cross at all." Brandon's blood ran cold, understanding clearly the impossible situation he now faced. Trapped dangerously between two powerful, ruthless men, each capable of destroying his life completely. "I need time to think," Brandon said desperately. His voice trembling, Salvador studied him carefully, his patience clearly limited. "You have until tomorrow evening," he said coldly. "Choose wisely, Brandon. Your life depends entirely on the decision you make." As Brandon left the restaurant, his mind raced desperately, searching for any possible way to escape the dangerous trap closing tightly around him. He knew clearly now, whatever choice he made next, his life would never be the same again. Meanwhile, back at Cross Tower, Damien received an unexpected phone call from one of his informants, his expression darkening rapidly as he listened carefully to the troubling news. "What is it?" Mia asked, noticing immediately the serious concern spreading across her husband's face. Damien lowered his phone slowly, his sharp eyes filled with quiet anger and concern. "The Morenos," he said grimly. "They've approached Brandon directly. Mia's heart sank instantly, realizing quickly the dangerous consequences their earlier confrontation might have unintentionally caused. "What do they want from him?" Damien's expression hardened, his voice steady but serious. "Information about us, Mia. And if Brandon refuses to cooperate, the Morenos won't hesitate to eliminate him completely." Salvador Moreno sat alone in his private office, staring silently at the reports detailing his organization's significant losses. Anger boiled quietly beneath his controlled expression. Humiliation, burning far deeper than any physical wound could ever cause. "Damien Cross made a fool of me," he muttered darkly to Vanessa, who stood nearby, watching her employer carefully. "What's our next move?" Vanessa asked cautiously, sensing the dangerous tension radiating from Salvador's controlled fury. Salvador considered the question silently for a long moment, his sharp mind calculating carefully. "A direct attack against Damien would be foolish right now," he admitted reluctantly. "Our resources are too weakened after tonight's failure." "Then what?" Vanessa pressed carefully. Salvador's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "Sometimes the most effective attacks aren't physical," he said slowly. "Damien values loyalty, reputation, and public respect above almost everything else. If I can't defeat him through strength, perhaps I can weaken him through public embarrassment instead." Meanwhile, unaware of Salvador's shifting strategy, Damien and Mia continued rebuilding their sense of normalcy, cautiously optimistic that the danger surrounding their family had finally begun to fade. Brandon, safely relocated outside the city, sent occasional messages expressing genuine gratitude for their protection, slowly beginning a fresh start far away from his previous mistakes. One evening, exactly 2 weeks after their successful operation against the Morenos, Damien and Mia attended a prestigious business gala, an important annual event attended by influential business leaders and powerful families throughout the city. It was an event where reputation, appearance, and respect held significant importance among the city's elite. As Damien and Mia mingled confidently among respected guests, Salvador Moreno unexpectedly arrived, drawing immediate tension throughout the elegant ballroom. Guards discreetly tightened security, watching carefully for any sign of danger. Salvador approached calmly, a controlled, confident smile masking his simmering anger. "Damien, Mia," he greeted smoothly. "What a pleasant surprise." "Salvador," Damien replied coolly, his sharp eyes carefully studying his rival's calm exterior, searching for hidden intentions. "I wanted to personally congratulate you," Salvador said, his voice carrying just enough volume for nearby guests to overhear clearly. "Your recent business maneuver was quite impressive." Damien remained calm, understanding immediately Salvador's subtle attempt to publicly embarrass him by hinting at recent violent conflicts in front of influential guests. "Business requires careful strategy," Damien replied evenly, refusing to reveal any hint of concern. Salvador's smile widened slightly, clearly enjoying the tension building within the room. "Of course. Though I've heard rumors that your wife's past relationships have caused quite an interesting complication recently." Several nearby guests turned curiously, sensing tension rising between the two powerful men. Mia felt anxiety rising within her chest, but remained calm, refusing to allow Salvador's manipulation to unsettle her confidence. "My past," Mia interjected calmly, stepping forward gracefully, "has taught me valuable lessons about resilience and strength. Lessons I'm grateful for every single day." Salvador studied her carefully, momentarily caught off guard by her composed confidence. "Interesting perspective," he said smoothly, though his confidence wavered slightly. Damien stepped closer to his wife, pride evident in his expression. "My wife's strength and resilience are exactly why I admire her so deeply," he said firmly, his voice carrying clearly through the quiet ballroom. "Unlike people who measure worth through wealth or status, Mia understands true value comes from character, loyalty, and genuine strength." The surrounding guests murmured quietly, clearly impressed by Damien's confident, respectful defense of his wife. Salvador, realizing his attempt at public humiliation had completely failed, forced a tight, controlled smile. "Well said," Salvador replied stiffly, clearly frustrated by the unexpected turn of events. "I suppose I underestimated both of you." "You're not the first," Damien replied calmly, his tone carrying quiet, confident warning beneath his composed exterior. Salvador, recognizing clearly that his attempt to weaken Damien's reputation had backfired completely, excused himself quickly, disappearing into the crowd with his pride further damaged. Later that evening, as Damien and Mia finally returned home, exhausted but relieved after successfully navigating another dangerous encounter, Mia turned toward her husband, gratitude and admiration clear in her expression. "Thank you for defending me tonight," she said softly. Damien smiled gently, pulling her close. "I'll always defend you, Mia, whether it's against ex-boyfriends, rival families, or anyone else foolish enough to underestimate your strength." Mia laughed softly, resting comfortably against him. "It's strange," she admitted quietly. "If Brandon had never humiliated me at the mall, none of this, meeting you, building this life together, would have ever happened." Damien considered her words thoughtfully. "Sometimes, the most painful moments in life eventually lead us exactly where we're meant to be." Mia nodded, smiling warmly, deeply grateful for the incredible journey that had transformed her from a heartbroken, humiliated young woman into someone strong, confident, and deeply loved. As they stood together on their balcony one final time that evening, watching the peaceful city lights stretch endlessly beneath them, Mia realized clearly that whatever challenges still awaited them in the future, she would always face them fearlessly, standing proudly beside the man who had taught her the true meaning of loyalty, strength, and genuine love.